So I'm sitting here with Jama, who had a really interesting presentation at the FMX. What were you presenting?
Well, I was basically presenting VR world for artists. It's just like explaining how you can use VR as an artist, illustrator, designer, or concept designer. Concept art has evolved so much since it was introduced back in the 70s. Back then it was only pen and paper. Yeah. You would use drawing, sketching, painting skills, but then obviously coming to a digital era, you would have Photoshop, and you would start, like, at some point people started using 3D as well. So VR is a kind of like actually a natural transition, or shall we say evolution of things. So because it combines all the good sides of 2D artwork, 2D approach, and 3D. So it's kind of combination of those. That's why I think for artists it will be like a next step and something that we will learn and use very widely in the very close future.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that? Why? What advantages does it have to just 2D or just 3D?
I mean, the advantage VR would have is that, first advantage is the sense of scale you get with VR is something that you would never get with 2D artwork or 3D, because once you are in this VR world, you always feel like you are there,
In front of you.
Yeah, and this is a very unique feeling. But apart from just a good, great feeling being there, it's also very practical, because if you're designing something that has to be built later on as a physical set, or prototype, you're basically prototyping them in VR first, which is very cheap to do before you start using real materials. You can actually get the total sense of scale, and how big your set will be, or how good your product will look when you hold it, and stuff like that. That's why it's something that neither of them, 2D or 3D, could give you. That's why we're gonna pick it up, and we're gonna use it very like everywhere we could possibly use it.
Okay. In your talk, you talked about that we need to choose wisely if we use 2D, if we use 3D, or something in between when we make a concept art. How do I make this decision? Like, how do I know, okay, this would be a better concept art for 2D, this would be a better concept art for 3D? How do you decide that?
Well, it's simple as you went to a restaurant and they serve the spaghetti, right? So exactly, at least approximately what you shall use, like a fork and a spoon, and then you just think from your own experience. Same with artwork, when you get an assignment, you look at it and you think what would be the best way to execute the given assignment. So sometimes 2D will be faster, sometimes 3D, but with VR, I think that will be also the choice, and in most cases you could go, I should start doing it in VR. So in a nutshell, it's experience plus your knowledge. The more you know, then the more chance you have to go for a right tool, shall I say.
Yeah. If I wanted to take the dive into doing concept art or anything with VR, what tools can you recommend? And isn't that very expensive?
Well, it is very expensive, but human beings, we have two kidneys, so you can probably give up one of them. Yeah, but the expensive part of a technology, we all know when technology is a new thing, it's very expensive. Yeah, you can remember first. I mean, iPhone is still expensive. Let's give something else, right? Let's say a printer or a computer. They used to cost fortune, right? When they first came out. But what the greatest news was for people was that the potential was out there, and the technology it just became much affordable and cheaper. So I guess if you want to dive into it, you can just borrow from a friend of yours just to see if it works for you. Right, that's the first kind of step. But then if you like it, obviously you can upgrade your computer and slowly get into it. But I totally believe in 2 or 3 years this technology will be as affordable as it normally should be, and also it will be much more advanced as well, because right now everything out in the market is just the first generation, and with every first generation, it's very clunky, it's big, it's expensive, and stuff like that.
So how is your working process when you are in VR in this blank world? How do you start out?
Well, it's difficult to explain just by saying that. You have to experience it, but basically it's you being in this world where you can draw and model in VR space, and it feels very much like sculpting, real sculpting, because you take it like a material and then you extrude it. But instead of having a real material, you have this like virtual 3D geometry. So I wouldn't say it feels too much different. And at some point, I think once the graphics catch up, and you will have a big trouble differentiating like the real world and the virtual. So I think that's another market when people just escape there and live there and do their own stuff, which is also interesting because it will open new things. A lot of like starting from education to designing to prototyping, even like medical therapy. You can heal people like presenting them a nicer environment and something they can like go and just relax. So VR world is an interesting one.
Yeah, certainly. When he presented it live on stage, you had the headset and the two controllers to paint actually in VR space. I was very impressed by this, and I was also thinking, I'm an animator. How great would it be to just have the puppet in front of you and just grab the leg and move it a little forward, grab the body, nudge it a little forward. It's basically stop motion at this point. And yeah, is there a tool for animation already?
There is actually two or three tools that I know, and people are already doing some amazing stuff. Like a good friend of mine, Goro, he does like crazy animations, and something that would normally take you up to a year, like a project, he was able to do in 2-3 weeks. Because, like you said, it's a stop motion, but it's cheap because in order to make a stop motion to work, you need to make puppets, you need to like shoot and move yourself, shoot and move yourself, remove yourself. But here, like basically you puppeteering and you don't see yourself, and it basically you get all that stuff for free, and also just like it's just manipulating with objects inside VR is so super intuitive. So that's for animators. I have no doubt it's a future. So trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Do you have like an Instagram or a book or something you want to plug?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram. If you just type in my name, you can find me out there. Subscribe and get
down here.
Yeah. So yeah, but in a nutshell, I think like what VR needs right now, apart from technology, like push, it needs people actually like starting like doing something, because as an artist, we are very conservative. We learn something for 10 years. Let's say you studied animation, and then like suddenly people say, oh, it's a bit old school, right? Nobody likes that.
Yeah, sure.
I think like people just need to be brave, and they need to start using it. And hopefully in 10 years, this technology will be as widely used as your iPhone.
Yeah.
And it will be still expensive as iPhone as well.
Who knows? Sure. So if you are a student, I think especially there are many schools who are getting into VR stuff, who are getting VR headsets, then this should be definitely something that you should try. What was the app you presented today?
It was Gravity Sketch. It's like industrial design oriented tool. Yeah. But yeah, I'll encourage people to start using it. And if you still don't believe it, just invite me. I will convince you 100%. I always do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jama, for this great insight. VR could be the future, will be the future, probably. It will be the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you think, hey, drawing in 3D space is a pretty cool thing, but you don't have a VR headset, you might want to have a look at Jama's tutorial about the Blender Grease pencil, which is exactly that. In Blender, free open source 3D software, you can draw 2D on 3D geometry or just in 3D space. And yeah, in the tutorial, he is showing you all the awesome stuff that you can do with it, even without a VR headset. Just wanted to mention that. And last but not least, I wanted to thank the FMX for allowing us to do the interviews year after year. If you are in Germany or even in Europe, the FMX is definitely worth a trip. And yeah, I tried to get the other interviews cut as fast as possible. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and yeah, keep animating. Talk to you soon.